Hi everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to be making a couple of projects with the newest treasure bags, the Denim Days and Denim Nights in the Denim Showcase treasure bag. So what I am going to do is I'm going to make these necklace sets and earrings, and then I'm going to make a bracelet. Now these aren't necessarily a set, it's just a couple of projects that we're going to do with the bags. So these ones were done with the Denim Days, these ones were done with the Denim Nights. I do have a bunch of this stuff on the website, so if you'd like to make any of these things, you can. And if you stick around to the end of the video, there's a little announcement at the end, a little giveaway. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the first project. Okay, for this first project, we're going to be using the crystals that are in the Denim Nights treasure bag. However, you have very similar crystals in the Denim Days. They're just a light blue color, and you can use them. But we are going to be using the 6 crystals that are not in the Denim Days bag also with this. However, I have made little packages up of the Denim Days color. I put the same size as the clear crystal in here. It's also a light blue. So I have these little packages available on the website. I also have them available in the dark and clear. So there's 6 of each crystal in there. So if you want to get some of those, they are available. However, you can use whatever you have in your stash too. I'm not trying to push products. It's just I have some extra. And sometimes people like to do what I'm doing. So it's available. We are also going to be using some more of these bead caps that were in the treasure bags. Now, if you got 2 bags, you have plenty to do this with. If you didn't get both bags, then you will, and you already did the previous project, you will not have enough. However, I do have some of these also in packs of 10 on the website. So they are available if you want more. Or you can just use something that you have in your stash also. I'm going to be using some Toho seed beads. These are size 8/0 nickel color. And I'm going to be using some of these little crimp beading chain ends. They have a little loop and a crimp tube on the end. Those are available on the website too. However, you can use a crimp tube and a clamshell tip if you would like also. There's a video called Beading Chain 101 on my channel that will show you all different ways to end the beading chain. We're also going to be using 2 size 2 crimp tubes, and one of mine have disappeared, but you'll need 2 of those, a head pin, and some beading chain. This beading chain is Koreana style. It's on my website also if you would like some, and we're going to be using about 18 inches of that, and I have the platinum tone color. So that's what we're going to be using for this real quick little design. Okay, so let's get started making the focal for this particular design. So you need your head pin, and you're going to use one of your large crystals, and then a bead cap. And we're just going to make a little wrapped loop here. So I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, and I'm going to place them right above the bead cap. I have my pliers flat. I am now going to push the excess wire over the back part of the plier, then turn my wrist so that the plier is now up and down, and then bring the excess wire over the top of the plier. And then I'm going to turn my wrist so that my plier is flat again and draw this wire underneath the plier. Now I'm going to hold on to the wire, the excess wire, and my bead cap, and just kind of rock my hand back a little bit away from me so that I center that loop, just like that. Now I'm going to grab a pair of flat nose pliers. I'm going to hold on to this loop and position the excess wire so that it is very close to the plier and it is the same angle as the plier and parallel to it. Then I'm going to turn the piece over as I switch hands so I can hold it with my left hand. The wire is now underneath the wire that goes into the beads, and I can start to turn. So I'm going to coil around the wire that goes down into the bead cap, and I'm going to coil nice and neatly till I get to the bottom. And then I think I'm going to just do several turns over the very bottom coils, because this bead cap has a pretty large hole in it, and this is a very fine wire. So I'm just doing kind of a messy wrap to broaden the end of my coil and keep it from going through the bead cap. Okay, so now I have made my coil, and you can see the little extra piece sticking up there. I'm going to cut that down. And then I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and I'm going to tuck that little excess piece in the best I can. And I'm just using the first divot on my crimping tool is round, and get that tucked in there. Okay, so it's being stubborn. Let's see if I can use my smaller crimping tool and get that little guy in there better. Finer wires are much harder to tuck in, I find, but okay, so there you have it. Now that we have our focal, we are going to grab our beading chain, and we're just going to slide the focal through the loop right onto the beading chain and center it. Just like that. And then we are going to grab a bead cap, and we're going to put it on either side or both sides of the chain. So we're going to put one on, and I'm going to put it from the back end through so that the wide end is out. And just slide that on there. Then center my chain, and I'll get you in a little closer here, and center it the best I can. It's going to move several times. You can just keep centering it. Then I'm going to put a crystal into that bead cap on both sides. And then another bead cap. And again, you want the flared part out towards the end of the chain. And then again, another bead cap. And a crystal. And I'll center it again just for good measure here. Put my two ends together and push this all to the center. And then I'm going to grab, come here, an 8/0 seed bead and put it on. And then I'm going to grab a crystal of the smaller size here and put them on. Okay, come here and go in there. There we go. Then another 8/0, and then I think I'll put another couple crystals. So put that 8/0, 8/0, and then a crystal, and an 8/0. And my crystals are kind of dull. I'll wipe them off, clean it all up so you can see the sparkle. But I always have oil on my hands and I touch everything and it just makes everything dull. So I'll clean that up. Okay, so that's what I have. Now I want to pick it up and get it all centered very nicely, and this is what this is going to look like. And then I'm going to lay this down, making sure that things stay where I want them, and then I'm going to grab my crimp tubes. Keep disappearing. What in the world? Let me grab a couple more. I know I had plenty out, but okay. So I'm going to grab a size 2 crimp bead. This is more secure. It's a crimp tube, actually. You can use a size 1 round and just squeeze this on here, but I like the security of using the size 2 and doing an actual crimp. So I'm just going to slide crimp on both sides, and without moving anything, I'm going to pick up my crimping tool. Without moving anything, sure, right, and I am going to go into the, let's reimagine this here. let's get a bead stopper, because I'm going to push these beads all over the place doing this. So I'm going to recenter, and then once I get this nice and centered, I'm going to put a bead stopper right on this side so that I have something to kind of work against and keep things in place. Then I can pick up this side, make sure I push everything down to the center, and put that crimp tube right into the second divot of my crimping tool, and then squeeze. And now I can place that crimp tube back into my crimping tool sideways, and then, so let me get you really close so you can see that it forms 2 little tubes on either side, and I have them touching the crimping tool in the first divot closest to the tip of my crimping tool, and then I'm going to squeeze. And a lot of times it moves, so just move with it and make sure that you crimp it so that it draws together. And so now I have my crimp on there, and I can go around in my first divot here and just kind of shape it and reduce it and make it tight against that wire. Just making sure that you're using the round part. So this first divot here. Now I have a really nice looking little stop there. And I hope I was in camera because I zoomed in so much. We'll do the other side so you can see. Now that I have this side done, I can work with this side and I can grab a hold of it, and I'm just going to push it all together and then just ever so slightly back off and then squeeze. So just slightly backing off gives some flexibility for your beads to lay correctly. And then we are going to crimp it the second stage here. So I'm going into the first divot here, turning my crimp sideways and squeezing. And then I can go around it several times, reducing it, tightening it against that chain, and making it prettier. And that's what that looks like. Now, let me back off and see what I've got here. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That looks pretty nice. And now I am going to do my ends here. So I'm going to align my ends, make sure I was pretty centered. So one side may be a little longer than the other. That happens. So that's why we're going to do this. We're going to lay it out the best we can. And they want to wrinkle up, so geez. Okay. I'm going to say this one could use a little clipping on the end, but they're pretty close. Now that I have both ends the same length, basically, I'm going to take one of these little crimp tubes that have the loops on it and put the chain into it, just like that. I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and in the second divot, the one closest to the handle, I am going to center this little tube and make sure that it's in my plier flush, so the very end of it is flush with my plier, or even slightly recessed. And then I'm going to squeeze, because you only want to crimp the very end of this tube. You don't want to crimp towards the top, because you're going to crush your loop and mess up your crimp. So now I have a little divot in the middle. I'm going to place it back into my crimping tool, making sure that the end is flush with the back of my tool, and that my crimp tube is sideways, and do that again because it moved, and then squeeze. And this is what I have, really nice little crimp. Now you can go around this and squeeze it down a little bit better, a little bit more too, with your first divot. But I actually think that's okay, so I'm not going to do that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. But we can do that off camera because there's no reason for you to see that again. I am going to open my jump ring. Let's get a small jump ring because we're going to need to put our clasping on too. So I have to find a small jump ring. Afterthoughts, you know. And I'm going to just open the small jump ring. And then I'm going to put my clasp on that jump ring and then put it on the crimp tube loop, and then just close that jump ring. And now that side is ready. Now, after I put the crimp tube on this side, I will just open a jump ring and slide it on. So that is how we're going to do that. I will be right back once I finish that end, and we will look at the finished necklace. Okay, so here is what my finished necklace looks like, and I think it's really pretty, and it lays on the neck really pretty too. This is just kind of unique, and I like the look of it. Now, if you want to, you can make a pair of earrings. You will have 2 pieces of your crystal left if you're just working from the treasure bag of the clear crystal. So you could just make a simple wrapped loop and put this on an ear wire. If you want to get more crystal, because you only have 6 in your bag and we used 5 here, you could either just use 2 and then use your 3 clear crystals, or you can arrange it however you want to make your also have an earring or get more crystal. So if you happen to get more crystals and bead caps, or you find something that goes along with it well, then what I have done is I've got a little ball head pin, and I'm just going to make a wrap loop. I've made this cute little earring, this little dangle. So I'm just going to make a wrap loop on this little piece of crystal. So I'm going to place it on my pliers and just do the wraps like I've been showing you. Bring it over the top, turn my wrist, bring it underneath, rock it away from me to center it, and then I'm going to grab a pair of chain or flat nose, hold on to that loop, and then I'm just going to start wrapping around this. And I have a lot of excess there. I was a little high up on my plier when I made my loop. So I'm just going to wrap this around until it's nice and tight and holds my crystal there nice. And this is going to be a longer wrap than this one, but I can change that later. And then I'm just going to cut that off and get you in closer here. And tuck in the end very gently here. And then I will use a head pin, and I'm going to open my head pin first, so you can see where it's open right there. I'm just going to place my plier on there and just crank it up, twist it open, put on the component I just made, and then twist it closed. It's easier to do before you put your beads on here than after. So I just connect it first, and then I'm going to put on my big crystal and my bead cap, and then I am going to put my plier back on here, bend this over, and this head pin is a little bit stronger than the last ones I've been using, so it's a little bit harder to turn. But I'm turning a loop just like I've been showing you. And then I'm going to place my plier on there. And I think I'm just going to try to turn this with my fingers, maybe. Maybe not. Let me see. It's a much stronger head pin. So it takes a little bit more strength to wrap it. And then I'll cut that down. And tuck it in. And then I will grab an ear wire and put it on there. So that way you have an earring design. If you get a little bit more crystal, or maybe you just want to make the earrings and you don't want to make the necklace, or you want to modify the necklace, whatever. But there's a couple of ideas here for you to play with. Maybe you just want to make a whole bunch of pairs of earrings to sell. Then that gives you kind of a jumping off ramp. You can design them a little bit differently, whatever you would like to do. But let me show you what my necklace looks like, because I think it's pretty. Very unique looking, and I like that. I like it to be just a little different. And that turned out really nice. So that's one little project that you can do. I may go ahead and throw together one with the other bag just so you can see what it looks like. I do, like I said, have these bags with these other crystals here too. But I can use something in the bag instead of these. I can use some of the little column beads. I can use rounds. You can use anything you want up towards the top. It doesn't have to be this crystal. Of course, you can modify it any way you would like. So that's one project down. Okay, so I decided off camera that I did want to make one with the crystals that are in the Denim Days bag. And so I went ahead and did that. And I just put the pearls, the 6mm round glass pearls that are in that bag, as the accent here instead of the crystal, and it turned out really pretty. I think it looks really nice. It's exactly the same process that I did with the other necklace, except for I put 2 pearls on the earrings on one head pin, and then connected it exactly the same way I did in the other necklace. But I think this turned out really pretty, and I think that the pearls really accent nicely against those lighter crystals. And then I'll show you the one in the Denim Nights. And these crystals are really pretty when the light shines through. They're a lot more translucent than they look on video. These are really pretty too. So that's what our first project looks like. Okay, for our next project, we're going to make a cute little cha-cha type bracelet with the bellflowers that are in our treasure bags. So we have the same color in both bags as far as the flowers are, but the little beads I used in between, there's a difference in color. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to show you exactly what we're going to use. I'll show you the bracelet here. Turns out really cute. This is a 7 1/4 inch bracelet. So to achieve a 7 1/4 inch bracelet, I used 10 of the bellflowers. Now you have 15 in your bags. There was a misprint on the list that says that you have 25. You do not have 25, you have 15. Also, with these little beads, sometimes the end can be a little bit closed. So I've just taken my little pointy tweezers, and if you go from the inside and push out, you can get the little tiny block out of there. Some of them are like that, not all of them, but I've noticed as I was working with them that I did need to do that a couple of times. So you have these in both bags. Then we're going to use 11 of the coin beads, the faceted coin beads that are in the bag. In the Denim Nights, you have this magic blue, darker blue color, and then in the Denim Days, you have the steel blue color. That's what I used for this one. We're going to do the Denim Nights now as I demonstrate this to you, so we'll be using the darker color. I have pulled out of my own stash a couple of bell-shaped little bead caps. So you can use any bead caps you want. It may change the length of your bracelet a little bit depending on what you use, but these are kind of narrow and they are about, let's see if I can measure them real quickly. These are about 8 millimeters long. So there's about an 8 millimeter space that I've created for, or according to the length of my bracelet. So 2 bead caps, doesn't matter which ones they are. I have some bell bead caps on the website that will work too, or just pull something out of your stash. Then we're going to use one of the clasps that were in the bags. We're going to be using some 8/0 seed beads, and I have nickel out, so I'm just going to use them. And then we're going to be using some head pins, and you're going to need 10 of them. I have just a few here. These are 1 inch long. Now you can use a longer one, but you'll have to cut it down to 1 inch. And I'm measuring it from the tip of the ball to the end here. They're 1 inch long. And that's kind of important for this particular design. These are very thin, so I'm going to roll them instead of making just a regular wrap or a wrapped wrap, because, or a wrapped loop, I guess I'm trying to say, because it just works out better. It gives a little bit of spacing in the design too. So we'll be using 10 of those. And then I'm going to use a couple of these stopper crimps. These are the round ones. I have them on my website. This is the platinum tone. You do not have to use these. If you want to use them, you can. They are available. But you can use a regular crimp bead, and you can just put a cover over it if you want to or not. Doesn't matter. But this is what I'm going to be using for my crimping. And then I think that's it. Oh, no, that's not it. We need soft flex, and I'm using medium, and I've cut about a 12-inch piece, which is a little long for a bracelet, but I like to have a lot of excess to work with for my crimping. I just find it easier. So you can cut it a little shorter if you'd like. I like to have 2 inches on either side at least. So if you're making an 8-inch bracelet, you want to have 12 inches. So, you know, that's how that works. So go ahead and cut about a 12-inch piece of your soft flex medium, and we'll go ahead and get started on this particular project. Okay, to start this project, we are going to make components that look like this. And you can see I have kind of a coil down for my loop on the bottom of each bead, and you can see the little ball in the middle of each flower there. So we're going to make 10 of those. I have already made 9. So I'm going to make one on camera so you can see how I did it. I'm just going to pick up my head pin. Like I said, this is 1 inch long. You can cut down a longer one if you'd like, but you need at least 1 inch. These are nice and thin little ball head pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it at the very end here, just a little ways down on my plier, and I'm going to turn as far as I can turn, and then I'm going to just bring my plier around, and I'm going to keep coiling around, trying to stay about in the same place on my plier the whole way down, and just continue coiling it until I can coil it nice and tightly right up on the very back of that bead so that it's nice and tight. Now, where your end is, you may need to take a little plier. You can also go around with your round nose plier and squash it down. But if that doesn't work, then you just take a smaller plier and you just push that little end down so it's nice and flush with the coils and you don't have a pokey. So let me show you what I mean. You cannot see anything sticking up. That's how you want that to look. You want it to be nice and tight up against the back of the flower with no slack, just like that. And you're going to do that 10 times so that you will have all of your beads ready to go, just like that. And then once you have done that, then you're going to grab your soft flex beading wire, and you're going to grab a clasp and one of your crimps. Now, if you're just using a regular crimp bead, just go ahead and put it on normally and crimp it normally. I showed you how to crimp earlier, so you should be able to do that with a regular crimp if you are new. Now, I'm just going to put on my crimp, my stop crimp. You see it has a little plunger here. All I have to do is push that plunger in once I thread my beading wire through. So I've put my clasp on, and then I'm going to go back into this little bead stop and give myself a little bit more slack here to work with. This is why I like at least 2 inches so that I can actually manipulate things. So now I'm going to show you this without my fingers on it so you can see I have gone back through the little crimp stopper, just like this. Then I am going to take the longer one because I don't want a whole lot of slack there. I'm going to take the longer piece of wire. I'm going to hold on to that crimp, and I'm just going to pull this down until I have a nice little loop that allows my clasp to move around a little bit. And then I can arrange this. I like to turn these so that they're nice and neat, just like that. And my little plunger is on top here. Then I use my crimping tool in the first divot, and I just place it right on top of that plunger and on the bottom of the little bead, and just push it in nice and tightly. And now I have a really nice crimp, and this looks really pretty too. So that's how we're going to do that. And I am just paranoid, so I just do it one more time just to make sure it's really secure. And then I can cut this extra piece with my flesh cutters. I'll just go down here and cut this very short right up next to that crimp. And then that's my crimping. And then I am going to grab a bead cap. And again, just anything that you would like to use. These longer, narrow bell-shaped type work really well for this. So I'm going to use that. And this is just a matter of stringing now. I'm first going to use one of my coin beads and drop it down to that cap. And then I am going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead and then one of my flowers and drop it down through the loop that I just made on the flowers. And then an 8/0 seed bead and then a coin bead. And I'm going to repeat that. until I use up all my flowers. So I have got my 8 seed bead here. I'm going to put another flower on, and then another 8, and then another coin bead. And we're just going to continue doing that until we use up all of our flowers. So continue doing that and we'll be back. Okay, so now I have put all my flowers and all my coin beads and 8 seed beads on, and I am ready to put my clasping on. So after I put my last flower on, I put my 8 and then my coin bead. You want to end on your coin bead. And then we're going to take our little bead cap and put it on. Now, I forgot to mention that I do have more of these beads on the website. I do not have any of these disc beads. However, you can put anything in between these beads. I started this design with pearls, with the 6mm round pearls, and then I realized the one in the Denim Nights is purple, and I didn't really think that it would look that great with these flowers. It might, but I changed to the disc beads. So you can put anything in between you'd like. Gemstone, whatever, and it'll turn out just fine. So if you want some more of these, I will get them listed so that you can make one of these if you'd like. Now, I put on my bead cap. I am going to put on my little stopper crimp. Let's see if I can get that on there. And then I'm going to grab the other end of my clasp and put it on. Now I'm going to go back through the stopper bead here, and then I'm going to go into the bead cap and just kind of pull my, let's get you in closer. I'm going to hold on to the side that doesn't move. So on your loop, there's always one side that's stable and one side that moves. I'm going to pull on the side that doesn't move, and then I'm going to grab my beads when it gets to a small loop, and I'm going to pull this all the way down. I'm holding my beads so that everything stays nice and tight together. And this is what it looks like. Now I've pulled this all the way down to where there's no slack around the clasp. We want that to stay that way for a minute. This is the same if you're using a crimp bead or a crimp tube also. Just put your crimp tube on, do what I'm doing, and then adjust the crimp tube to give you a loop. So it's the same thing. So now I'm just going to cut this right underneath that bead cap. And then I can go right above the stopper bead and push it down just slightly. I mean, just slightly, so that it draws up any excess beading wire into the bead cap. Now everything's stable so that I can use my crimp tool and I can either crimp it if you're using a crimp bead or a crimp tube or the stopper bead. I can now pick it up and I can position it with my crimping tool in the first divot and then just squeeze really tight. Now, when you push that down, you've given yourself enough room to have a nice little loop that moves around your clasping, and you've hidden any excess wire, you see. Now, I'm going to just push on this one more time because I just have to. There we go. Make sure my crimp worked. And my bracelet is finished. Oh, come here. Do it right. Do it right. Okay, so that's what that looks like. I'll put the Denim Days one next to it. So we've got Denim Nights and Denim Days. I'm going to go ahead and put them both on and let you see what they look like. So that if you have both bags, you could wear them together. And again, like I said, I have more of these beads, so you can put anything in between them that you want to make them look, like the creamy white. Glass pearl works really good. Even the sodalite that we have in this bag, or if you have some sodalite in your stash or anything in between, will look really cute with these. So let me back off a little. Geez, that's really close. And that's what that looks like. It was really cute. I think they turned out really nice. And that's another really simple, really fast project that you can do with your treasure bags. So I think I'm going to call this video done so it doesn't get too long. But I'm going to try to do a few more projects together so that we can get these going. We'll see what I end up designing and how fast I can make them. Will depend on how many I make in an actual video. But there you have it. And then let me show you these guys. So there's that one. And then there's this one. And I think they all turned out pretty nice. So anyway, there we have it. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me back off so you can see the darn things. There we go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider giving me a little like. And if you made it this long in the video, and you would like to leave a comment, I think I'm going to consider giving these pieces that I just made away. So if you made it this far, then you will know to say in the comments that you would like to have one of these. And then I'll just randomly choose out of a hat or something the names who commented. And I will send you one of these pieces. Okay? Bye-bye.